R1. I was taught that human rights tends to lead us to positivity, but in our society, our rights as humans are not much of a value shown in the community. With the existence of those corruption and discrimination, my right to speak, to live, and my freedom to move is reversibly questionable. Through crimes, deaths, increasing rates of killings and persecutions, the importance of justice is now not that applicable. Men are treated unequally, women are treated abusively, children are being labeled and raped recklessly. People against the governance were killed intentionally. Justice for people are not given evenly. Human rights, our world has been dying for, our people have been asking for, our rights as humans.
Every Nigerian citizen, by virtue of his or her humanity, is entitled to certain fundamental human rights. These human rights are available to all citizens, regardless of their race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status, and without discrimination.
Human rights are those rights every human being has just because they are human. So they are rights that are connected to one another, and they make it possible for human beings to live a qualitative life and also to enjoy life. So oftentimes people tend to think of rights as things that government hands over to you, but they're actually rights you have because you are born and they belong to you, and no one is allowed to take it away from you, even by using any means possible, because it's natural, it's universal, and it doesn't matter whether you are black, white, or a man or a woman. Everyone is entitled to human rights.
By 589 BC, we had what you call the Cyrus Pyramid. Cyrus the Great had defeated Babylon and set free all the slaves, giving them certain rights. Indeed, we must know that fundamental rights are themselves inalienable because they are intrinsic in man. They are fundamental and inalienable because when you remove them from man, from the Homo sapien, then you have reduced him to the state of an animal.
Some of these fundamental rights, as listed in the 1999 Constitution as amended, include the right to life, liberty, right to equality of treatment from any public authority, freedom of movement, freedom of conscience and religious belief and observance, freedom of thoughts and expression, freedom of association and assembly, among others.
Human rights violation, from my own understanding and what is generally accepted, is the trampling, the denial of another human being of his basic rights.
Human rights violation it's almost like because it's a culture in Nigeria, and it's a culture that we're ensuring that we put a stop to it. Over the time, citizens of Nigerians have been violated in different forms, and they have come to accept that violation as part of as part of living. And so when we speak out, and you see people who speak out, the first thing you hear is that, oh, are you not afraid you might be killed, you might be locked up, and all of that.
Any action being executed by a representative of government against the rule of law is tantamount to human rights abuses, and it's so common in Nigeria. When a fair hearing is no longer a guarantee for a commoner, it is human rights abuse. Where a poor one are not, when there is no equality between one class or another class, it amounts to human rights abuse, contrary to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
In Nigeria, there are various violations that occur which could limit or even violate completely these rights. Some of those rights include right to life, in cases where people are arbitrarily killed or extrajudicially executed by security agents, or when there are cases of violence and state authorities do nothing to stop or to hold the perpetrators to account. There are also other rights that could be limiting people's rights to movement, people's rights to assembly, people's rights of association, because these are fundamental rights which are available to everyone. But in some cases, because of certain situations in the society, government might try to limit them.
Human rights abuses have been things we've had to cope with. Government after government, after government, after government. You only became so bold and comfortable under this administration.
Nigeria has been so abused that Nigerians actually are in an abusive relationship with their government. And so you find them sometimes even supporting, just like somebody in an abusive relationship where they support the abusers. So they end up doing that. They support their oppressors because that's all they have known, and they are always afraid of the unknown. Over time, some people have had to pay with their lives. People have been killed, people have been arrested, people have been shot down just for having voices.
We are a victim of systematic decay or an abuse of rule of law, and is being encouraged by the federal government. And not only this federal government, it has become a culture in Nigeria where government is always right. You heard the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, Malami, before the National Assembly said the national security supersede human rights. How?
The difference between a dictatorship and a democracy is the respect for the rule of law. That's all. Nothing else. The fact that I can speak boldly and I'm not scared that any government will arrest me, in as much as I do not speak wrongfully or falsely. But when I start having fear that, they might arrest me. I have to, if I want to call you, I have to call you on WhatsApp for security purposes. We've lost it.
Despite the provision of these fundamental human rights in the Constitution, there have been constant violations that occur on a very regular basis, especially politically, where protesters or opposition voices have been silenced from speaking against the government of the day. In cases where some of these political activists have stood up and stepped out to wage various peaceful protests in accordance with their fundamental rights, the outcomes have not often been pleasant.
A government that is not sure of its legitimacy will always be scared of the people freely expressing themselves. We've had presidents in this country who were stoned during campaigns. We've had presidents who were abused, called all manner of names, abused, even coffins made for them. Nobody was arrested because we were practicing democracy.
The basic rule of government is the protection of lives and properties, and any government that cannot protect lives and properties is not fit to be called a government. And every one of us is in the Constitution. We have a fundamental rights, human rights, and part of them is a right to life.
Nigerians do not need permission from police to stage a protest. And the police keep on saying they must approve any protest, as that they may amount to undermining the right of other citizens. Nigeria as a country, all our security apparatus or agitations are loyal or are friendly to government. And it has never happened anywhere where police contradict any pro-government protest. Rather, it is anti-government that the police or SSS always go against.
During successive military regimes, how did we get about democracy in 1999? We were on the streets on a daily basis. Ganifa with me, myself, few. We were not more than 10, 15. They will gas us. They will use helicopters to gas us from the sky. On one occasion, Ganifa with me collapsed. We carried him on our shoulder. They beat many of us. They killed some. A person like Bagel Dakato was killed. Some ran abroad into exile. Some of us stayed back. We say we will not go anywhere.
I've been shot at with water canisters. I've been tear gassed under this government. We've been, in fact, my friend was sent to prison. Like 3-4 of them were sent to prison. You know, why? Nobody, they weren't carrying guns, nothing. Just people who assembled to demand for good governance.
I've been on the streets several times protesting, and I've always had that confrontation with the police or other security agents where they try to stop you. And that's violating our fundamental human rights of freedom to movement, to free movement. And so these are some of the things. And sometimes they try to shut our voices down. They try to take away those voices. They don't want you to speak out, and you are attacked. I've actually been tear gassed by the police. What was my offense? Just for simply coming out to make demands for Chibok girls who have been abducted for over 5 years.
There are several people in prison. Dadiata, a vocal critic of this government, he's been missing for 2 weeks plus. Kefas is in prison in Kaduna. They went to Port Harcourt for a post he made on Facebook. They arrested him. He has been in prison for months. Deji Adeyanju was in prison for months. The MD of Chocolate City, I've forgotten his name, Audu Mekori, was in prison. John Damfulani was in prison. The only common denominator, the only thing that joins these people together is the fact that they critique and they criticize this government. None of them is an armed robber. None of them was arrested for armed robbery. None of them was arrested for treason or for wanting to bomb. Do you understand? The only thing that they did was the fact that they courageously came out to say the truth.
There are quite a number of such attacks, not just to me alone. I mean, a whole lot of people. Right now, we have so many people who are in captivity. There's Kefas who has been arrested just because he did a Facebook post, I believe, a Facebook post. There's Dadiata, whom today nobody even knows where he is. He was taken away from his house, and there are speculation he was taken away by this or by that, and yet the government isn't doing anything to ensure that he's being brought back. We have Showore, who called for a protest, and then he was picked up by DSS, and now he has been remanded.
Cases of human rights violations by the rich against the poor in our society have become an order of the day, where people without any privilege are oppressed and their rights violated without any recourse. These mostly occur domestically, with most of the victims of these rights violated not speaking out. But thank God for the social media, which has been helping to curb these violations in recent times.
Equality before the law means that no one should be treated differently because of their gender or their sex or their wealth. And so a poor person should still have access to justice the same way a rich person does. And not having money should not deter someone from getting justice.
I think the whole concept of setting up a government is to bridge the gap of inequality between the rich and the poor. The government is meant to bridge that gap and not to widen the gap further. So the government is there, and if we have good people who are passionate about human rights of the people, then we'll put proper structure in places whereby the poor people find it easy to get justice.
No Nigerian is more Nigerian than any Nigerian. So when they go to the security agencies, what happens? It now depends on who is powerful, who is richer, who has more money, and you find out that people are being oppressed, even in their own country. When individuals oppress them and they go to security agencies, nothing happens.
The places of professional employment cannot be left out when we talk about human rights violations in Nigeria. We find cases where employees do not even realize that their rights are being violated by their employers. In some cases, some employees are aware but see it as a normal thing. They bait and move on, thereby refusing to speak out or take any actions due to fear of losing their jobs or other repercussions that may follow.
The violation that exists in workplace cannot be classified as a norm. It's because people have not seen how justice has been gotten for a case, or people have not seen what happens afterwards when their rights are being violated, or people have not even taken critical steps to address some of these things. When you see a successful example, then people know that yes, it's a violation. But the fact that you're being violated in the office or in the workplace doesn't make it has to be a norm. But because of the situation of the economy in this country, because they believe, okay, if I should talk, they're going to send me out of my job, and there's no job outside. That's why people are really taking in what they should not be taken in for.
Perhaps someone is abused within the workplace, or someone is deprived from legitimate activity due to discrimination. So this could be discrimination as a result of HIV status or gender. Then the state comes in again, because the Constitution also provides that everyone has a right to freedom from discrimination. And so it's important that the employer, in carrying out its task, does not violate this principle. When it does, the state can step in and say, you violated the right of X, and so we are going to be pursuing this course of action against you.
I was at a place, I was driving out of a particular establishment, and I saw, so our car was behind, and this security man was practically being harassed by somebody in a car. And then he was trying to tell him there was no place to park. And this guy came out, from where I was in my car, because there was a car between us, you could see him yelling. He took out there was these blocks that they took them out and then drove in. So by the time I was driving, so I stopped, I was asking the security man, what was that all about? I mean, he was so beaten. You know, when somebody has been taken to the lowest or degraded, he couldn't even speak. So I parked, I drove out of the building, I parked, and I came back and I said, what was that all about? And I asked, where is whoever is the head of security here? I need to speak to you, because you must empower your men to be able to speak up to people. And we waited that day, we had to look for that particular person where he had gone to. It was a hospital, he had gone to visit. And then when he came out, I took him up, like, look, you can't do what you just did, because by doing that, you are endangering everybody in this building. If a criminal is coming, they're going to do the same thing that you did, and this man wouldn't be able to say anything. By the time I started speaking, a whole lot of people that were there who were silent all this, so yes, the behavior, it wasn't good, and everybody spoke up.
Whether it's in a small organization, whether it's in a big firm, whether it's in government office or a private office, once you find out someone is trying to sexually harass you or ridicule you or embarrass you, you have the right to speak out, and you have the right to seek for a redress.
We take to the streets of Abuja to find out from Nigerians if they know their fundamental human right. We ask them to list some of these rights and share some of their personal experiences of human rights violation, if any.
Well, fundamental human rights are basic rights which every individual is entitled to by virtue of him or her being a human being. So these are basic rights that are guaranteed under the Constitution. So everybody, by virtue of his being as a human, is entitled to these basic rights. They are basic, they are fundamental because they are basic.
Fundamental human rights is the ability for citizens to have a certain level of freedom to do certain things. So the Constitution has contained several rights, in quotes, that citizens can choose to have freely without infringement or interference from anybody.
Fundamental human rights, as entrenched in our Constitution, is the basic right of citizens to carry out whatever duty under the confinement of the law. That's the right to live, right to worship, and right of association.
Freedom of speech, freedom of self-expression, freedom of thought, freedom of movement, freedom to do whatever you want in the right manner.
Another is right to personal liberty. Now that is provided under Section 35 of the Constitution. So under this right, every individual is entitled to his liberty, personal liberty. That is to say, you are not to be subjected to any form of restriction or dehumanization.
I was in my office, all of a sudden they bring police to come and arrest me. What happened? Nobody tell me. All I know, what happened? Nobody explained. It's against my right. So you see, before you even a police, you move anybody from where, tell him what is his offense. tell him. The law says you should let him know his offense before you move him away. What is by this nobody time? It's against my human right, please.
Like now, a police accosted you on the road. Where are you going? Are you coming from? And before you know it, you say you bring your phone. You want to share your document. You want to check information there. Who are you? And those are your personal information. He does not have the right to check those things. By that, your human rights have been violated.
When the rights of citizens are violated, the government has a duty to enforce the protection and to seek justice for such citizens. Through the security agencies and other bodies of government, no matter how high or low they are placed in the society.
They can go to various organs. For example, there's what we call the legal aid scheme, which can take care of certain rights violations. Some of us have departments in our chambers where we take care. Pro bono, we handle cases of human rights violations.
Many NGOs are filling this gap. And depending on the area of focus, whether it's children's rights, women's rights, whether it's on cases of torture, whether it's on trafficking, provide differing services. So if you're talking of women's rights, we have groups like Project Alert on Violence Against Women. We have Ward C, based in Lagos. Here in Abuja, we have groups like Dorothy Ndemanze Foundation, and then other groups like RAPA, who provide services for women, particularly domestic violence victims or survivors, and rape victims. Then you have groups like LEDAP, which provide services for people who have been victims of police abuse or torture victims. And then several other groups working in their various communities across the country.
I'm doing something, I'm having a pet project in my community, hoping to set up a community center whereby every victims of gender-based violence will be able to seek address and support. In the sense that I'm hoping in the country whereby every community has a center whereby it will be a safe space for people who are facing gender-based violence.
As a government, as a nation, and as a people, we owe it to ourselves to look after one another and respect each other in all circumstances. We must come together to find lasting solutions to human rights violations in Nigeria.
First of all, what the government needs to do is to respect the rights of citizens to life, is to respect the right of citizens to freedom of worship, is to respect the right of citizens to freedom of movement, freedom of speech, and all of that. If the government itself will honor and follow the Constitution, a lot of the problems that we have today, as Nigeria, we wouldn't have them. People wouldn't be on the street.
An organization like Legal Aid Council, who's supposed to stand with the poor one, should be well funded, so that an abused person or whoever thinks his or her right has been violated by anybody should be able to approach the court of competent jurisdiction to seek redress. Financial autonomy for judiciary, so that the justices today shouldn't be cash and carry.
If you are detained for any reason, go to court. If your house is invaded for any reason, go to court. If you have domestic violence against you, go to court, because you have rights that have taken care of your welfare as a human being, different from animals, different from the era of the Hobbesian state of nature, where life was short, nasty, poor, and brutish.
There's a need for every one of us to speak out and speak more on issues like this. Let us not say that it is none of our business, because today it might not be you, tomorrow it will be your turn. I always like to say to Nigerians that, look, yesterday's victims were once survivors. Today's victims were yesterday's survivors, and tomorrow's victims will be today's survivors. Who is next? In Nigeria today, being a victim is no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And the victim card is going around. We don't know where to get to. So it is in our interest for every one of us to speak up.